Hi students, Mr. Pistel here, and I'm out on the East River, as you can see, which is not Newtown Creek, but feeds into Newtown Creek. And it's a really nice day, and today we're going to talk about ecosystems and food webs. So, what is the start of a food web? The start of a food web is energy. So where do most organisms get their energy? That's right, from the sun, which is behind me. Then what are the first things that absorb the sun's energy? We call them producers. So as you can see below me is kelp. So kelp and algae and land plants absorb the sun's energy and using photosynthesis convert that to sugar. Then what happens? Then we have what we call primary consumers, which eat the producers. So we call them primary consumers because they're the first level of consumers. They eat the producers. Then we have the next level, which is secondary consumers, which eats the primary consumers. Finally, you might have just a few tertiary or third level consumers that eat the secondary consumers. So the further up you go, the less energy there is. The further up you go, the less organisms there are, because every time you go up a level, you lose energy. So in Newtown Creek, again, we first get our energy from the sun. Then we have algae, we have grasses, and we have other plants that are the producers. And the primary consumers, which eat the algae or eat the plants, include oysters, mussels, clams, little fish, and other things. Then we have the secondary consumers, so whatever eats those little fish would be a secondary consumer, like the kingfisher, or whatever eats the oysters and mussels. And then we have the secondary consumers, which eat those, so the bigger fish, the bigger birds, and then finally at the top of the food chain, we have cats, raccoons, humans, the biggest birds. And the last thing that I didn't mention yet is called detritus, which is anything that, or we have the decomposers that eat dead things. So whenever an organism dies, something like a crab will eat kind of dead, decaying material. They'll eat the detritus. So here we are looking at the food web that Lisa from the Newtown Creek Alliance created. So let's go through it. So food webs show how energy moves through a system. So the arrows represent the flow of energy. So we're going to start at the top because the energy comes from the sun. There's a few organisms that use the internal heat of the earth rather than the sun, but most of life on Earth's energy starts from the sun. The sun's energy goes to algae, which includes seaweed and very small cells, marsh grass, and flowering plants with flowers. Then you'll see in the other yellow ones, those are the ones that eat what we call the producers. So the green is producer because it produces its energy from the sun. Yellow is a primary consumer because it eats the producer. So insects eat plants. Some crustaceans eat on the algae. Little, really small fish eat the algae and the producers. Oysters filter it, so they can also get some algae. So let's go to the next level. I think that's orange. Orange is probably the secondary consumer that eats the primary consumer. So the kingfisher can eat the mummy chog, the little fish, so it's a secondary consumer. A striped bass, big fish eat the little fish as well. They eat small things, so they are secondary consumers. And finally, the top consumers, so they're like tertiary or third level consumers, are cats, which are invasive species, so cats can eat birds. Raccoons eat pretty much everything. Cormorants eat fish and other things, but they're one of the top level consumers. And egrets and herons are really big, and they are some of the top level consumers, and barely anything tries to eat them. Did I miss any here? Humans are technically at the top of the food web, but usually we don't eat any of these because the creek is too polluted, excuse me. And that's about it, except for this one. Detritus is dead and decaying organic material, so anything that eats this, we call a decomposer. So microbes, bacteria, and also crabs, fungus, insects eat dead and decaying organic matter. That's it for today.